Well, nevertheless, let's have another round of applause for our final guest, Zachary Allgood, and his teacher mentor, David Locket from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. How are you?
Good.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
David, thanks for coming
Yes.
out. So, Zachary, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I go to Central Magnet School in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I'm a freshman there.
Freshman there? Okay. What's it like being a freshman at the school?
It's difficult. There's a bit more homework than in middle school.
They take it up a level. Well, you know, when I was looking at through some of your notes, you were talking about the pressures that you have, you know, being a freshman at a magnet school. And one of the things you mentioned was, you know, getting straight A's and getting the good grades. Tell us a little bit about the pressures that you feel. I couldn't have said that better myself.
It's hard. It's hard.
Believe me, when I have to go to department meetings and they start asking me questions, that's kind of the response I give. So don't feel bad.
Right.
But you know, just say whatever comes to your mind. So I tell you what, I'll ask it a little bit differently. When you first got to the school and you walked in the door and you saw the kids, what came to your mind? Like, wow.
More like, oh no.
You know what? It's funny. I remember someone saying to me once, there is so much power in your silence. And it's just from the look on your face, I can imagine how daunting that must have been walking in the school for the first time. So we've been there. I mean, I am sure there are thousands of students that are watching this show right now that have felt exactly how you felt. But you know what? Let me ask this question. David, so when we looked at the notes that you gave us for, you know, the show, and he was mentioning about the pressures about getting an A at a magnet school. As a teacher, and I know I feel this, I feel sometimes that A is sometimes detrimental, that desire for that A, because it puts this pressure on a student and they forget sometimes about the content and not the A. I'd like you just to tell me about how you feel about that whole way.
Well, you know, you want students to see the bigger picture. You want them to see why they're studying what they're studying. You know, you want them to have that practical knowledge and be able to say, hey, this is why I'm studying it, and this is how it's applied in the real world. So, you know, you look at the overall package that the student has. You know, they're studying, they're playing sports, they're in after-school activities. How does that figure into everything they're doing? How do those grades, how does it go hand in hand with what they're doing? So, you know, you want them to understand the goal they're trying to reach, as well as why they're doing it.
So when I had a chance to meet you both at the same time, you had came to the school to do the rocket launch. And I remember I was saying, well, let's get an example rocket. And you brought forth the rocket that you had designed. How did it feel having yours being the first rocket to launch that day?
It's awesome.
It was awesome. So tell us about what happened when we set that bad boy off.
Well, you put it on the thing, and you connected the little spark things, and it went away.
It went away. Did we ever find it?
I don't think so.
No. It's probably in orbit right about now. So, David, as I understand, you are an incredibly talented grant writer. Now, that in itself, I think Dina, anybody in education will tell you that is just a daunting task. Could you share with us a little bit about your experience with writing grants and why you feel you're so good at it?
Well, the past few years, you know, I've looked at, you know, trends in education, and I've looked at trends in technology. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy has projected new initiatives for all of our students, whether it's STEM, whether it's STEAM, whether it's technology. They want those teachers to see how STEM and STEAM can be a bigger part of what students are learning. So I thought to myself, you know, if all of these activities are available, how can we get funding? That's the big question. So, you know, I started writing, and I found out there's a large amount of funding available for teachers to do these projects, whether it's robotics, whether it's coding, you know, whether it's art projects within STEAM. They're promoting it, and they're really pushing, and they want teachers to write those grants. They say, hey, you know, we've got this money available. We want to see a successful project. We want to see how your students are integrating that within the subjects. So it's available to everyone.
And so do you have any advice for other teachers that are looking for ways to sort of bring these hands-on projects into their classroom? And as sort of a follow-up to that, I mean, how do you think those hands-on experiences really impact the students?
Well, you know, you want students to see the bigger picture. You want them to see, hey, this is why I'm studying this. This is a part of a real-world study. So if they see a rocket launch on the news, they can say, hey, I actually have a part of this in my classroom. We're looking at inertia, we're looking at the physics, we're looking at everything that encompasses, you know, what we're learning in the classroom and how that can be applied. So, you know, if you're a teacher in that classroom and you're looking for, you know, funding or you're looking for an activity, search out, you know, those foundations. Search out those community programs that are going to initiate that and give you the funding and help you get, you know, what you're trying to achieve in your classroom.
Excellent.
So, Zachary, you know, I think sometimes there's a stereotype that to be successful in school, you have to be this kind of out there, gregarious, or just like a really big, giant personality in a school. But obviously, you don't need to be like that. So, if you could say anything to students out there that are kind of like a freshman or about to be a freshman, or, you know, have been a freshman but they're still nervous about going in to be a sophomore, what would you want them to know about how they face those pressures when they first get to school or moving into a new grade?
It gets easier as the year goes on, and you start to adjust to the new challenges.
So it's all about adapting, huh?
Yeah.
How are you adapting?
I'm doing well.
He's like, I'm good. Now, your last name is Allgood, right?
Yes, it is.
Let me tell you how jealous I am of your last name. Because I would go with, if I had your last name, this is what you should do. Like if you get into a club, you know, and everybody's losing their mind, just sit back in there and it's like, okay, we got this covered. It's all good, baby. You're like, I'm going to do that. Well, I'm going to give the last word to David. It's a common question, but I really like to get that story out there for teachers. If there's anything that you want teachers to know out there, positive or how to deal with something negative, if you wanted to tell something that you felt was your manifesto as an educator, what would it be?
You know, I'd say, you know, try to be an encompassing teacher. You know, try to be someone that can see everything that happens in the real world. You want your students to take in as much knowledge as they can, so you should do that at the same time. Try to make things practical, you know, try to make yourself aware of everything that's happening. So you can be informed and they can be informed as well.
I really appreciate that, David. Zachary and David, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And I'm really particularly glad you had agreed, because I think sometimes our soft-spoken teachers, soft-spoken students kind of get lost in the mix, but they're out there. And they really need to know that there are people like them out there and know how to navigate those pressures of school. So thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for speaking about what your experiences are.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
We'll be back in a minute.